Hello everyone, I'm 博维，我是博维。然后我们今天很高兴的，很荣幸的有机会邀请到 Esperanza 来帮我们演述，来给我们一个 talk， 来给我们一个 lecture。这个讲题的名称是《灰尘让光束变得可见：其他媒介对电影的溢出和扩延》。It's very honor for us to invite Esperanza to give us a lecture today, and the topic is that makes the being visible. And we have Xian Yu as translator for us. And I would be more like a joke. Some words I guess I won't translate it properly. He is here to help. Yeah. Sometimes maybe I could be a decent decoration. Okay, let's welcome Esperanza.
Yeah, thank you. Should I keep this microphone? Yeah. Should I keep it? Okay, no, because there's another one here. Okay, thanks everybody. Thank you, Bowie, for the introduction. Thank you. Thanks a lot. It's quite interesting that I just realized that exactly today, 4 years ago, I arrived in Taipei for the first time, and it was the first time I put my foot in this area of the Southeast Pacific. So today is very emotional as well, what I'm going to talk about. Poet told me, please introduce yourself as much as you want, but I'm going to be talking about myself tonight for a long time, so I guess it's not necessary to overdo it. I'm going to be talking about my research, and of course I need to limit all this because it's been going on for a long time, for at least 15 years, and it's very intimately related to some writing that I do, some curatorial work that I did as well in my beginnings of the professional artistic practice, and of course it's very related to my artworks. So just to say that when I say artistic research, I mean also that the outcome is not only artworks, but of course as well writing and curatorial works, even though nowadays I am more focused in artistic practice. And one of the symptoms or the ideas that moved a little bit all of this research is that today we are, and for a few, maybe a couple of decades, we are living a massive migration of the moving image from the dark theater to the white cube, right? We are witnessing this migration from of the moving image from the dark space to the white gallery. And this displacement of the cinema has been triggered by the digital revolution, but also the dual phenomenon of the dematerialization of the art object and the theatricality, the recuperation of theatricality of the art of the artist, contemporary artist. All of these phenomena sort of facilitated this movement of cinema, from this displacement from the black box to the white cube. I don't know if you can see this properly. Can you? So this kind of context that I wanted to approach for the start of this talk enables us to reconsider the conditions of experience that sort of defined the cinema for over a century. We need to redefine the cinema in this kind of a scenario, right? And this redefinition cannot be thought from the restricted viewpoint of the history of film, but from a wider position of a general history of representation that also involves history of art and history of performing arts. At least all of this sort of equation from here is where I think about my work. I don't know if you need to, or anyone needs any translation here?
Maybe I can do it briefly. Right?
Yeah, if you want.
Should I?
Does anyone need?
我就简短讲，基本上就是从前面，今天是刚好4年前，他就是刚好也大概是这个时间到台湾这个地方这样。所以他大概开一个玩笑说他可能也有点情绪化这样，然后他刚刚所讲的是，基本上他今天他会分享他主要，因为他平常有做研究有写作，然后当然也有做艺术的创作，所以对他而言，如果说就是他今天内容里面所指的 artistic research 可能就是包含这些东西这样，对吧？大概是这样，然后后面他这边是解释说。就是从开始有，比如说影像的媒材，然后一开始都是在全黑的空间嘛，然后地域性上面去发展，基本上它到最后变到不管是美术馆还是艺廊，然后虽然说大家也还是会把它弄黑，但是是一个转折嘛，一个不一样的展现这个媒材的地方，然后刚好也因为就是从开始。媒体到大众媒体，然后到现在网络性质的媒体，然后数位化全部媒体，当然就是渲染的时间会越快嘛，对啊，大概是这样，好，
谢谢。So, sorry. So an evaluation of this displacement, of this massive migration that I was referring to, of the cinematic apparatus, has led us to invent new narrative framings from which to understand this link, cinema and art. And I chose to do it under a term, Paracinema. And this term is under this term is let's say the umbrella from which I do my research. So let me offer to you a brief analysis of Paracinema first. The kind of practices that Paracinema involves and the relationship between Paracinema and expanded cinema before delving into a bit deeper into some of my works. So Paracinema is generally, this image is just a few publications that I saw here that because when I started to do my research, this is around the year 2005. I finished the PhD in 2008. And the book I just saw is like a short version that was published a few years later. When I started to do my research, I didn't know that there were other people at the same time in other parts of the world doing a very similar research. And this is quite exciting because we didn't know. We didn't know that the others were doing this, but we were sort of digging into the something quite that had been led there in a, let's say, in a corner, darkened corner of culture, being ignored by both history of film and history of art. But there was an interest in these kind of practices, and somehow then I realized that other publications and other studies in this kind of, maybe not with the same title, but very similar, were being also published and at the same time or maybe a few years later. And this is, for instance, this one, Cinema Expanded by Jonathan Wally, is more recent. It's from 2020. And it's quite interesting. Also in Japan, there's been recently some publications on expanded cinema that are in the same kind of line. Should I continue?
基本上他今天会先从 Paracinema 开始，然后 Paracinema 对他而言，就可能像是他主要的研究，他先以这个为主，然后去做一个发展跟算是线索的一个路线。然后我猜简单讲，可能 Cinema 就是那一根拿着那个柱子，你可以像伞一样撑着，然后 Para 就是旁边嘛，所以就是跟电影有关，然后可能是平行在同样发生出来的事情都可以算是，如果是广义的去讲的话。然后接着他开始有那些研究，他当然也发现，其实在很多不同的地方也有类似的研究开始出现，然后他非常的兴奋，因为他发现就是整个过程就是从 cinema 到艺术开始有很多交叠的地方，这样，所以他刚刚就介绍了那一些书籍，比如说有 Cinema Expanded 是比较新的，大概2020年吧，然后像最近日本那边也开始整理60年代到现在他们日本的表演相关的视觉活动或者是听觉的，然后他们也把它整理起来，也称作就是比如说 expanded cinema 或是 cinema expanded， 大概是这样。
Thank you. So Paracinema is generally the dematerialization of film. It's the term I use to refer to the dematerialization of cinema, the possibility of a disciplinary or post-medium practice carried out by artists that at the same time embrace the medium but take a separation from the medium, distance themselves from the film medium, embracing this essential modularity of cinema. I am missing here another image, but it's okay. Well, so through this perspective, I will go a little bit deeper into it in a minute, but through this perspective of this term, Paracinema, I propose, on the one hand, an alternative genealogy of cinema as a disciplinary art form, so a non-disciplinary art form, an art form that is capable of being expressed in other media, not just in the traditional film apparatus, and that is halfway between plastic, visual, performance art, avant-garde practices and experimental cinema. And on the other hand, I also propose this concept as an expression of the ubiquity of cinema in all forms of contemporary art, as if cinema had become the paradigm of all contemporary art forms in its intrinsic moving image quality. And it was through a text of Hollis Frampton, this North American artist in the 1970s, wrote some notes about his film, Sons Lenma, a very mathematical structure film that I came across for the first time with this term, Paracinema. And in these notes, he said exactly that cinematic or paracinematic is, see, he says, to my mind, any phenomenon is paracinematic if at least it shares one element with cinema, as for instance, the modularity with respect to space and time, right? So any phenomenon could be paracinematic. The prefix para, it means besides or close to a cinema, if at least shares this modularity. So this idea raises some questions. For instance, can a medium persist through other forms of technology or other forms of art? It's possible that because today we refer to cinema and film to devices and media that are very different to those that cinema kept for almost 1 century, right? So we could say that the relationship between cinema and its technical support, cinema and its body, the technological body, remains problematic nowadays. Therefore, can cinema be dissociated from its technological support? Can we dissociate, put apart, no, the body of cinema from the idea of cinema? And ultimately, is cinema the only medium capable of expressing this idea of cinema, or film? Is film the only medium capable of expressing these ideas? Faced with the mere modulation of space and time, or the interaction of movement and light, are we in the presence of an idea of cinema? Is this cinema already? These questions not only refer to the philosophical vocation of cinema, but they also imply the question of its dematerialization. I'm not sure if this is too...
我就简单讲啊，因为这个比较多就是他主要在讨论的内容啊，然后基本上就是他开始去想要去找到一些 reference 去说 Paracinema 这件事的时候，基本上他一开始的出发点就是从比如说一个去物质化的形式去看这整件事这样，然后所以很多元素就是回到比如说他所谓的 Paracinema， 就是 cinema 是一个比较接近电影，然后又是可能是跟电影有一些电影的一些主要的元素，或是一些跟电影相关，然后周遭发生的事，他觉得都有可能是一个线索，是让他囊括在 Paracinema 这个概念里面这样。所以他刚刚也有大概就是介绍，他一开始也有发现，大概70年代那个美国艺术家，他的电影雷马 The Film from Frampton，对，然后因为他那部电影他也有用了一个算是非常算是一个比较像是公式形式的东西去诠释他那一个影像的创作这样，然后这也回归到他所谓的比较像是模组式的一个从 cinema 做延伸的一个创作形式，然后这里面也囊括蛮多，就是怎么说，就是当然也比如说你非常观念的，或者是说跟表演有关的，或者是像是早期比较 avant-garde， 然后不管是跟 各种形式的，其实它有可能都是能够关联到就是它的这个概念里面。
谢谢。So let us remember now in relation to this concept and the analysis made by Lucy Lippard that in the late 60s there had been a very important artistic moment a very important moment in artistic production. I mean that went from an art that prioritized the object and also the image, the visual, let's say the physical and visual part of art, to those artworks whose motor was now the idea and the mental process. Lippard called this trend ultra-conceptual art, not just conceptual art, but ultra-conceptual art. And she considered two directions from this trend. One was art as an idea, or as idea, and art as action. Art as idea denied matter, and art as action put matter in motion, right? So what I propose with the concept of Paracinema really enters a very powerful dialogue with this definition of the dematerialization of art. I identify Paracinema with a practice that abandons the reification or the objecthood of cinema, right? Or its existence through a film apparatus, and the absolute primacy of the domain of the image as well, because the image is also was also this it's also like an object as well, almost, no? So I propose this idea of Paracinema as a cinema that abandons also this primacy of the image. The practice of film performance that nowadays is a very many artists, many contemporary artists, and also very young like artists are more and more exploring this art form, would correspond to the field of expanded cinema and would have some relation to this idea of art as action, where the matter of film is experiencing some sort of rematerialization in the performative event. And somehow the idea of cinema is sometimes the only mechanism necessary to produce the film. So whether if they are sculptural, performative, or intervention works, it is about approaching those works in a cinematographic way, as if cinema had become the great paradigm of modern and contemporary art. So, however, the dematerialization of film or cinema is a process that not only affects the relationship between the medium and its technical support, but also displaces the ontological and philosophical presuppositions of the medium. In my study, which I am kind of presenting here in a very short way, but I would be happy to expand in more sessions if that was an option. But in my study, I approach this idea, these main ideas from two main axes, from two main branches. One would be the cinema as idea, and the paradox between ontology and dematerialization, and how some artists, starting from the 1970s, by trying to define the identity of a medium, of the medium of film, they are, in the end, they are really dematerializing the film. They are going beyond the film or going out of the film medium. So this obsession with the medium definition, in the end, ends up in the medium's dematerialization. And I will show you a couple of examples. And the other branch is more related to cinema as action, where I developed this dialectic relationship between dematerialization and the body, and is more related to expanded cinema as a performance art. So. Sorry.
I'm start to sweat 基本上就是我简单讲，就讲重点就好，就是比如说从那个 Lucy Lippard， 他就提出一个概念了，就是说他觉得是一个比较强的架构的概念，就是 art as an idea 跟就是 art as an action， 然后在他这个概念里面 ，art as a 就是艺术是一个从一个想法开始的话。他基本上他觉得就应该要去掉很多物质性的东西，这样。然后这其实有点回到刚刚他说那个70年代的美国艺术家，就比较像是他觉得当他在思考他的电影要怎么创作的时候，其实那就已经是其中一个部分。然后他其实可以延伸出很多其他，就是以传统就是比较像是一定到最后会 produce 出一个像是影像的东西而言其他的东西这样，然后 Lucy Lippard 另一个想法呢，就是比如说他觉得 art as action， 基本上他觉得那如果说艺术创作是一个比较像是行动式的，那其实他应该就要把就是整个 motion， 我有点不确定这个 motion 是哪一种 motion， 不过就是那个 motion。应该是要把它囊括到那一个，就可能那个创作的过程或是形式的结果里面。然后他的 Paracinema 就是他应该一开始也是说他从就是去物质化的概念开始做出发嘛，然后所以他到最后发现他觉得这一个想法跟他非常的相近，然后所以他也开始去发展出就是 cinema as an idea 跟 cinema as an action 这种概念，然后他等一下会有一些从70年代开始的范例是，比如说像很多创作者他们所创造出来的东西是从电影出发，但是其实已经去掉很多跟传统电影就是你去制作一个电影的那个概念下所产出来的作品，然后像Cinema as action 就是很多就是像早期囊括在 expanded cinema 里面的东西，它其实变成是有某一种程度的表演形式这样，然后这些东西也回去印证出其实它所谓的那一个就是从 cinema 开始移转到很多不同的地方的概念了，大概是这样，我尽量对吧？因为其实要记住好多字。即时口译真的有难度，不过我猜大家英文应该都还不错，就是其实他也没有特别讲的太复杂这样，然后他也有提到，其实他还有更多比较更细的研究，就是跟他研究有关的，然后他希望下一次有机会能够有机会再跟大家分享这样，
谢谢。So my work moves between these two contexts, right? These two ideas or axes. So now I would like to show you a few just 3 or 4 historical works that are not mine, but in order to put some examples of what I was just talking about. And one of these is this work by Michael Snow, an artist, Canadian artist, who actually passed away last year. This work is a film book. It's an artist book, right? So the book is supposed to be printed, and it's not supposed to be seen like digitally like this, but it's an object that you keep in your hands, and you can flip through the pages, and you can go back and forth in the book, and you can keep it in your hands. So it's something also almost sculptural, right? But I will show you the book this way. This is the title, is cover to cover. And this is, I want to show you this as well because it's the first, it had a an enormous influence in my work when I discovered this book. One of my lecturers in college showed it to me. I had the chance to have it for a while and explore it properly. And as you can see, this is, you probably realize that the book is made with 2 photographers. There are 2 photographers, and the artist himself is between those 2 photographers, just executing very simple gestures. Like, for instance, I go back to the beginning. In this first sequence, he's just entering one room. So this is the cover of the book, is a door, and then you see the 2 sides of the door. So he's playing with the side by side, the 2-side logic of the book. And in an interview that I did with him, he said, I wanted to do something that would accentuate the physical nature of the book, taking as a fundamental principle the double-sided component, or the front-back logic of pages. Apart from the physical or object element, I wanted to a continuity from page to page, a sequence from cover to back cover. I imagine the whole story, which, although there is a narrative, often brings the reader back to the very object nature of the book. It had to be photographic, and if one page showed the front of something or someone, the other side had to show the back of that something or someone. So, by being articulated in pairs of correlated photographs and in cinematographic sequences, this bookwork creates visual movements in thought and variations in perceptive times. And I thought that works like this can produce a true cinematic nature, even though they are not materialized in the film medium. And they produce a sort of immaterial film, or a film that is rematerialized in a different art form from the enchainment of mental images or movements choreographed by the spectator herself. So this part is where the book is inside the book as well. And sometimes it also forces you to turn the book upside down and get a little bit lost inside the book. And this is the final sequence where the artist is in his own exhibition in a gallery, and finishes this way. So Michael Snow is an artist that I also studied very deeply in my PhD and also my master's thesis. And this is a strategy that he uses a lot in his work. It's like the work shows its very principles of construction and enunciation. This is quite interesting. Another work I would like to show you it's this work by a British artist, Anthony McCall. He was actually in Spain last summer and showing some works, not this one, but other works that are quite important in his career. But this one is less known. It's called Long Film for Ambient Light, also from 1975, as well as the previous one from Snow. It's also from that same year. And in this work, there is no screen, there is no film, there is no projector. In fact, there are no objects or physical elements that could be of any value. We are facing here a work that is, I think it responds fully to this idea of dematerialization of cinema. The film is announced in the title, it's announced in the title, but is to be found in the coincidence of the very few elements that we find in this space. The work is an intervention in a space, and in this space, which was actually, this is like a drawing of how the intervention worked. It shows like a sort of diagram for the electric light and the fluctuations of darkness and daylight within this space during one exact 24 hours exactly. And this is the frame of time that the work could be visited and experienced. And so when you enter the space, there will be a calendar covering a period of 50 days, but at the center indicating the period when the intervention was presented, which was actually, as I said, 24 hours, one day. A second element was an electric light, just like an electric light bulb, right? Nothing else, like hanging from the center of the room at eye level. But also the windows. These two elements referring to light. The windows, the space is chosen probably for the disposition, the distribution of the windows. That reminds us of the structure of celluloid. That is a structure with interval, frame interval, and the windows had been intervened with covered with some reflective white paper, and this way the windows served as screens, as they could let the light coming from outside illuminate them, so making some white screens during the day, but without letting us see what is on the other side. and during the night reflecting the light bulb, so also being white, like a white screen, right? And the third element, quite important as well, was writing, a piece of writing on the wall by the artist himself, Anthony McCall, and the writing with the title Notes on Duration. So the intervention, just without going so deeply into the writing, but the intervention deals directly with, if we think about it, with three elements of cinema, right? Which is duration or time, montage, or editing, and light, the light modulation that we were referring to at the beginning of this. He in the text, McCall talks about the fact that observing a work of art, if it does not change, we tend to recognize it as an object. While if it changes, we usually say that it is an event. So he recognizes this distinction between works that are objects or works that are events. And he also criticizes the traditional distinction between timeless arts, like painting, sculpture, drawing, those that are supposed to be static, from time-based arts, like video, music, theater, dance. And he states that the time of contemplation is always a time of activity. And therefore, it does not make sense to divide the arts under such parameters. So this work is a Paracinema work consisting in producing a cinematic experience beyond the standard film apparatus. That is, the idea of Paracinema could be seen as a shift of the focus of attention. Instead of working with film, projector, screen, or camera, McCall is working with light and time. In this kind of works, it's also quite important that the author is, the title of the work is Long Film for Ambient Light. It's not just anything, but he wants us to experience this work as a film, right? Should I continue or okay? So another canonical example of Paracinema is, for instance, the Stuffed movie by Joyce Whelan. Here, probably it's quite easy to understand what she wants us to, how she wants us to interpret this work, or her series of the disaster paintings, like the boat tragedy or other tragedies that she painted, that were she presented like sequences dividing the canvas in different sections or compartments, as if they were like film frames, or we can think of the comic drawings as well, right? And in her vertical collages, like the Stuffed movie, she often used these materials, like plastic. In this case, it's plastic, but sometimes she used quilts, she used crochet and other materials associated with the 1960s housewife's work. And she was a very feminist artist, and they are also arranged, these sort of frames as if they were frames, like from a film, like in cinematographic decoupage, sort of. And this other work by Tony Conrad, the Yellow Movies, is a series of ephemeral works in which he investigates process, change, and the relationship between matter and light or time, as it consisted in exposing pieces of paper covered with a photosensitive paint to natural elements, exposing these pieces to natural elements. And here the color would change throughout the years. I tend to think that these could be considered as the longest films of the history of cinema. They took 3 years, this at least, no? And they could go on and on. And Tony Conrad also always playing out of humor in his works, and sometimes he did like performances where he would electrocute like a film or baking film, or here he did his pickled film, and sometimes he did that also live. So all of these works and other works, here I'm showing you like a very maybe more evident examples, right? But Paracinema sometimes don't have to be exactly the pure dematerialization, but also how how to say it, like gradual dematerialization, where maybe there is one element of the cinematographic apparatus missing. Maybe there is like a film, but there's no screen, or there's no projector, or there's no, something is missing, no? But also there are ways to materialize films in other forms. But in any case, these works, these sort of works and others trigger my research, at least the first phases of my research. And I think it's a more experimental than academic research, because as I understand it, the experimental research always starts with a question. And for me, the question was very clear from the beginning, starting with the discovery of this work that I just showed you by Michael Snow. And this question was like, is possible to make or to do a cinema without cinema? Is possible to approach a cinema without film or without cinema? So that was the question that I wanted to. I was looking for the answer, no? And I was looking for the answer through this research in the history of art, and sometimes digging into those works that didn't really fit well in the history of art or in the history of film. So nowadays it's not so hard to find this kind of work, but as I said, when I was doing this research, other people were also looking in the same direction somehow. And also not only doing this research through the study of history and looking for these kind of works or examples, but also by experimenting, by doing things myself. Sorry.
No problem. 我想一下哦，所以他刚刚那些就是作品的案例，大概都70年代、60年代。他从 Michael Snow 开始，然后就是应该蛮多人知道，就是加拿大很有名的艺术家，去年也走了，然后就可惜啊，对啊。然后他那本书的作品，是一个算是他的开始啊。我就连他后面刚刚解释的，就是他开始去思考说，那有没有什么方法是去做 cinema， 但是没有 cinema， 然后没有 film， 这样大概是这种概念。然后像 Michael Snow 他 cover to cover， 它其实是一本书，但是他就以他去，就是他有就是专访过 Michael Snow， 他主要的内容他是希望 他想要去制造一些很物理性质，大家对于就是很自然的对于他平常人拿到一本书会做的一些事情，所以他就去思考，就比如说你今天，比如说电影有很多元素嘛，比如说 sequence， 然后这些东西，那他怎么样去把它融到一本书里面？然后这也是一个算是一个好的案例，是今天就从去掉比较物质性质的电影去看这整件事情，所以他那本书就是一开始这个门嘛，然后你翻，然后其实就是他所希望就是你今天看到的东西，其实背后也是会看到其他的东西，所以其实是两面的这样。然后接下来是就是 Marco 的作品，然后那个作品，他其实一开始就很强烈的说它是一个 long film， 然后 for ambient light， 然后基本上它主要大概你如果到现场就是三个元素，就第一个是你会看到是一个 calendar， 然后基本上它是一个24小时的变化。然后我讲重点好了，主要就是你今天在那个空间里面，它就是一个灯，一个人造的灯光源嘛。然后可是就是那个空间里面有就是序列式的窗户，然后它会把它贴成白色的，所以基本上对于观者而言，可能你会有两面的变化嘛，就一个是白天外面的东西会映照到那些窗户上，可是今天当晚上你从外面看的话，是里面的电子光源的变化就是你从窗外看得到这样，所以它基本上就是也是用了非常多就是电影里面有的一些元素跟做法，然后它只是去处理就是空间跟光源还有时间的关系，然后去创作像是电影这种。就是一个电影的形式这样，然后所以其实有个重点就是，其实就是他们开始转变到很多不一样的艺术的表达方式，可是其实就是有一些连接都是回到电影这样，然后还有 Tony 就是那个比较幽默的，就是他是去处理一些。就比如说感光的化学颜料，然后跟一些基本你今天要去制作，然后跟冲洗电影会使用到的一些东西，然后他把这个时间就整个 process 拉到很长，然后去用一些也是非常观念式的去表达，就是他所想要传达，就是比如说他这是叫 yellow movie， 然后其实还有一些他刚刚说比较幽默，就是。Pico film， 对，然后还有那个另一个基本上 I forgot her name， yours， 对，然后他基本上就是也有绘画的形式，但是他是把画布切割成很多不同的格状的东西，然后变成有一个时间性，也是序列式的去表达，就是一些电影元素的影子这样。然后他比如说这个 Stuff Movie， 他就是在使用很多60年代常见的材料，然后这些材料基本上很多是一些家庭主妇他们会去使用的，然后就比较多的塑胶啊，然后一些生活的东西，然后应该就是可以表达出就有个叙事的关系啦，对吧？基本上大概是安呢。然后我讲的是有点笼统跟简单，就希望大家见谅，对吧
？Okay, so now I would like to talk more about my own work. Before it was also about my work, but in other terms. But I wonder if maybe anyone wants to ask anything or say something at this point.
接下来他会开始从比较多是比较 practical 的他的练习，就比较像是他自己的作品去做分享。然后当然前面那个也是他的研究这样。然后他现在是想说，现场有任何人，或是网络上有任何人有任何问题吗？就其实也可以先问，然后他也可以回答的。 如果没有，就也只能再继续下去。
Because we can be 2 hours, right? But this is including a Q&A? Oh, no, I mean, I don't want to like get people too tired, but just to know, okay, we don't need to be like closing. Okay. Okay, so another opportunity for question now? No? Yeah. Or otherwise I can keep talking and yeah. Some shy question maybe, no? Okay. Okay, so let me. Where? So the way as I said, this is the main question from where my research sort of revolves around if it's possible to make or cinema without cinema, right? Of course, there are some paradoxes here because I also would like to make a cinema, of course, but in different terms, right? When I think about it, when I was preparing this talk, I actually realized that most of my work could be put into one of these 3 like bags, so to speak. Is cinema and body, this relationship, or the cinema as the subject of a rematerialization, and how the body plays a particular role here, or cinema as a sculpture as well, very related to cinema and body, but mostly as an object of contemplation here, a sculpture, and the ideas that this involves, right? Because there are 2 different media here, sculpture and cinema as writing, but also cinema and writing, and the text and the film, and the relationships between movement and stillness, and all of these ideas that are involved in all this. So many works, some of the works are approaching the three bags at the same time, or 2 of them. It's not a clear distinction sometimes, but just to think about it this way is sometimes easier. And when I think about the body in cinema, I did some reading of Gilles Deleuze, the French philosopher. He has 2 cinema studies, 2 books, 2 main volumes on cinema, quite interesting, and he approaches this question of cinema, body and brain and thought. And also when I started to make a work in this kind of field, I started as an independent curator. And I was working in contexts that were not institutional. They were quite independent, quite, let's say, like spaces where I could really play a lot with the spatial aspect dimension of the work. And that let me to understand the mise en scène of projection, how to say it, the distribution of the film apparatus in the space, and my presence in this space as if it was a performative situation, not just like situating things, but I was there as the curator or programmer who put together some works or some films and presented them in front of the audience. Then I went back to project them from the projector, very often 16mm films, so it was analog film. I projected them, then I go back to the audience, try to create a dialogue. So it's this kind of experience that in the end I realize is quite performative as well. Or there are aspects about the movements of the body in the space that could be choreographed, and in relation to the film apparatus and the idea of cinema as a space, not just as the apparatus, but the whole event of cinema projection. So in relation to my practice, this discovery crystallized in a more conscious use of the body in relation to the syntax of the film apparatus. Then, of course, I believe that the making the presence of the body visible during the act of projection or during the screening, it has the potential to deconstruct the traditional unidirectionality of film projection, and it also has a power in its capacity to invert the philosophical formula by which the body is seen as an obstacle for cinema to reach thought, right? It's in a traditional cinema theater, the body is an obstacle. The body should be forgotten. It has to be invisible, right? And when I say the body, I say the body of the spectator, but also the body of film is disappeared, is made invisible in the projection booth. Also, the cinema as a space has to become invisible as much as possible. There are some interesting works by other artists in this sense, in this kind of line of making the space completely invisible, no? Like the invisible cinema by Austrian filmmaker Peter Kubelka. But anyway, this idea of the body in the cinema formed by the physical support of the machine, but also the body of the projectionist and the body of the audience or the body of the projectionist artist is a presence that remained invisible in the cinematographic projection as we have commonly known this situation. The darkness of the cinema theater, the invisibility of the projection booth, all of this facilitate the so-called immersion or identification with the screen. So in my work, I try to invert this logic in a very conscious way, right? And as Gilles Deleuze put it, the body was the traditionality, the inheritance of theater. So how to reconciliate theater as well with cinema and to create this kind of work that where cinema is not the enemy of theater, and where cinema really asks for a body, no? Like as Gilles Deleuze put it, like give me a body then. This is the formula of the philosophical reversal. So by creating choreographies around and in the betweens of the film apparatus, by creating, also negotiating between the tensions between the two-dimensionality of the image and the three-dimensionality of objects or the bodies that can also interact in the space of projection by bringing three-dimensional objects, no? This presence could be And this presence, physical presence of cinema could be intervened. The film apparatus is I wanted also to mention this, that there is a very interesting definition of the film apparatus by Rosalind Krauss, an American critic, that she says that the film apparatus is the medium of support of film, being neither the celluloid strip of the images, nor the camera that film those images, nor the projector that brings them to life in motion, nor the beam of light that relays them to the screen, nor that screen itself. But the film apparatus is all of these elements taken together, including the audience position caught between the source of the light behind it and the image projected before its eyes. So the film apparatus is all of this really together. That's why very often when we talk about expanded cinema, it's really it's a redundant term, as Jonathan Wally put it. It's a paradox because cinema is already something really heterogeneous. It cannot be reduced to one thing. So it's so heterogeneous that how can you expand something that is already so expanded, right? Should I continue? So from this kind of context is where I thought my first film performances. From this reflection on the body in the film projection, and also taking very into account that some artists like Bruce McClure had put it in. Nowadays we are confronted with the projector as not as the servant that used to be, this servant invisible and silent that was shunted to the wayside, to some darkened and to some projection booth where nobody sees the projector, but the projector now, the film projector now re-enters the theater as the star, no? And in some performances, like one of my first ones is okay, here. I also can show you a short video, but I will show you these images first. This one was called Cinema Corpus versus Cerebrum because it really comes from this very straightforward reflection that I just talked about. These concerns of the body, it was actually the conclusion, the last chapter of my PhD. So I wanted to take this into artistic work and try it as a performance happening. Really, when I describe my work, some of my works as performances, I realized that they may be quite different from, I mean, performance art is really huge and every performance artist may approach it in its own, his or her own way, right? But the way I see it, the way I approach it, sometimes is also quite close to an idea of environment, where there is a situation created and things happen there, but there is like it's like an environmental art in a way, but not in the sense of like a land art or something like this, something more constructed in the space. And this work here, is one of the first ones, as I said, where I want to play with the body and displays as much as possible the importance of the image. For the image, in the end, I used only material that I could create without camera. So this is using 16mm film, but all of the films that are projected are made with different techniques that were not involving the use of camera. For instance, painting the film with a spray, or placing some color gels or filters on the projector, on the light beam. Also placing some piezos, some like a contact microphones on the projectors. The sound was also an important part of the work. I can keep talking. There's gonna be sound, but I can keep talking over it. So maybe let's not play it too loud. And so the idea was to just reduce cinema to its most essential properties and materials. So what could cinema become if it's just like a beam of light or a strip of film, almost without any image passing through the projector? So in the end, we have like a flickering light, a light pulsating, and the sound generated by the projectors themselves. And there was an idea also of like returning the look of the cinema to the machine. Like the center is the very machine. So as you see, is we play a little bit further. One of the main also pursuits that I wanted to explore in this work was finding the existing differences between perceived reality and the reality of the medium. Perceived reality as the reality that a photographic image in motions, if you want, can present, and how this can be displaced by the pure materiality of a medium. So here the dematerialization is mostly applied to the very image, the moving image. But in order to dematerialize cinema, I think first you have to understand what is the material of cinema. Then another work in this kind of line is the gas works, which is here. Okay, here what I was exploring here is the relationship between film and its support, the projector, as something that is really in the digital age, when artists, as Nicole Brenes has put it, the advent of the digital makes possible to grasp a specific constituent of the image made on film, and it's unstable character is instability. In film, in analog film, every time you play a film, it can change completely, depending on the support or depending on the projector, depending on the density of the film, depending on the passage from one frame to the other. The traction movement produced in the projector when it is unreeling the film, also things can happen there, no? And it's possible to bring this into an extreme. So in this work, what I wanted to explore really is sound, optical sound, something that I was trying to find something that only film can make, right? And this is the possibility of the optical sound workings. You can, in the piece of film, you can write, you can scratch, you can do several different interventions in this little piece of celluloid, and this will be read by the projector as optical information, and it will produce a sound. So in a way, the gas works, even though it was a work really exploring different aspects, but this is another one of them, the optical sound and also the performativity of film. Film is already a performer, right? So this idea of the instability of film, which again also relates to the sculpture, film as a sculptural form, and as something that could be also related to showing. No, I was when I was constructing these films in this way, it was actually like a collage work, and I am not the first artist to realize this incredible relationship between showing and editing film, analog film. You can, here I wanted to do like all sorts of unorthodox manipulations I could do. So what if I do this to on the film, and what if I glue or adhere something else, and what will happen if no? And just to compromise, see what is the limit of the projector, what is the limit of this relationship between film and projector. The idea was that the films will break. At some point they would break. I would sew also with a sewing machine. I could sew the film live, then project it. And the idea was, as I said, that the films would break during the performance. The funny thing is, this never happened in this. Many things happened, very, very funny things, but they never broke. And I made some films that were part of this performance. Okay. Another work I would talk about in this section regarding cinema and body is We Only Guarantee the Dinosaurs, which is also is the first work where I really try to create a situation in the space that could be related to what is happening on the screen. So I did shoot some film, and the screening is part of the performance, but the performance is not just about the screening. It's actually different things happening in the space, and as I said, the main idea was to create. It's an exploration also of the cinema history, with some references and some objects that could refer to cinema history. So the objects I use in this performance are like a roll of red carpet, palm tree, red ribbon, raincoat, kettle, cardboard box, dry ice, water, microphone, feathers, lamps, muscle cells, cardboard box. So all of these objects take part in the performance, and at the same time, not at the same time, but in combination with some projections. I use two projectors, two 16mm projectors, and I create things and resonances between what happens in the space with those objects and with my movements and with my, sort of very laconic choreography in the space and in relation to the syntax of the film apparatus. This work also tries to create some intersection between dance, sculpture, and film projection. And it comes from a reflection of having gone to, when I was doing research, I went to some events in New York, in London, in Paris, in different other parts of Europe. And I really wanted to see other film performances, but normally I saw that most people remained behind the projectors. They had really like nice apparatus at play, in display, like sometimes 3 projectors, 4 projectors, and they had really nice or interesting images to project, sometimes loops and different interventions on the images. But I noticed that this was called performance, but nothing was happening between the screen and the projector. It was just the artist would remain behind the projector all the time. So these kind of works, really, for me, it felt like I had to do something here, because it was a huge gap, or a huge, like, nothing was happening there. And I thought it had a lot of potential. So I cannot talk about every work in this line, but there's been other works, like more recent, for instance, the kicked with the front foot on the dark side of the deck. This is another work in this line where I work with 2 or 3 projectors, and very often without, sometimes without film, but just projecting white light, and where my students also took place. And here I wanted to explore skateboarding and expanded cinema, something like this, let's put it, and how sort of mutant installations, as I call them, it has something to do also with theater, or some theatrical setting in which something is constructed and then deconstructed and constructed again. And some of my students also participated here. So playing with sounds, that creating sort of like environments that will be deconstructed again, and within the very performance, that is something is created and constantly deconstructed somehow. So another I just continue, right? Because maybe this is more about, I guess. Following this sort of idea, I mentioned like cinema as that was cinema and body, or like involving also the theatricality and the performative part. Another branch or another approach to my work would be cinema as a sculpture, as I mentioned before. And in this sense, I would like to talk about first about this work. These ensayos de la evaporación or evaporation essays, which is really one of the first approaches to this exploration of what it means to transfer cinema from a traditional function consisting in producing images to another more spatial function in terms of space that exploits the sculptural possibilities of cinema. And this could also be considered in reverse, that is, some works manage to transfer sculpture in its staticity, spatial or plastic character towards a more temporal and cinematographic function. So how can we create works that are positioned between, or at least they refer to being located between two apparently contradictory media, no? While sculpture is one of the most classical art forms in art history, film seems to be its opposite. Cinema is generally considered as something that is temporal, immaterial. It's moved through properties like construction of time, duration, movement, while sculpture is the opposite, is something often solid or firm. It's an objective thing, and well, it's a different form of matter, no? So sometimes playing with this, as I said, like not so much cinema as image, or a cinema where the image is not so important. Of course, here we could talk about some historical references as well. And another example of this is estados alterados, which is, it means something like altered states. And this is also another way to rematerialize the film. These are the films that were part of the gas works that ended up being a sculpture. And another way to see the film. This is a more recent work, La Relève, where a same, like a very long loop of film passes through two projectors. And on the film, there is the loop is divided into three parts. One showing the image of a smoke. Another part is black, another one is white. So the thing works really like a sculpture, where different moments visually are created. Then there is another work called The Box, where it has some relation to sculpture maybe, but maybe very loose. But this work was made after an experimental filmmaker, Takashi Makino from Japan, asked me to participate in a program he was curating with a film. But I didn't have any film to show, because the films, sometimes I made film, but these were always part of something else, not as something that could work autonomously. So what I did was like I prepared a performance that could be played by other people. I called it The Box, because I put like a short film and other objects and a set of instructions in a box, and I sent it to Japan. And the idea was that they played this performance for me. So the interesting point, I think, was also the loss of control of the artwork. Here I am not, I triggered this work, but there is a loss of authorial control. You cannot really know how the work is going to turn out. And they, Makino, and also he was working at that time with 2 other artists in a collective, Shinkan Tamaki and Rei Hayama. And the 3 of them performed the work they did a tour in different cities in Japan, and they always like show me what they were doing. So. And one of the most recent works that I made, also in this line of sculpture, is Trágame nube, which would mean something like swallow me cloud. And the idea here was to make, here I made a film. Actually, it could be said that it's the first time I made really a film that could be shown in its own. So I made a film, but it's a film that is made of 2 twin films, 2 sides. And the idea is to screen the 2 sides on 2 complementary, on the 2 films, on the 2 sides of a screen. And in this way, the viewer will never be able to watch the complete film in one time. So the viewer is forced to turn in circles. And in the two films are also what happens in one part would be complementary with what happened in the other part. It's related to this project to a Spanish experimental filmmaker of the 20th century, José Valdelomar, and it was a commission from the Museum of the Moving Image in New York. A very early work in this also line. Sometimes I've been told that they thought of the Michael Snow project, but this is very, very different really. It's also an artist book. It's an early work because I started this work in 2009, but then I had the opportunity to remake it. And it's actually made from frames, from film frames, shot on Super 8, like like the hands passing through the pages of blank pages of a book, and the work, this book work also was shown with other related pieces, including the like some writing and some a film to be watched with your hands, not with your eyes. And then I will just finish with just talking briefly about the other branch of my work, which is that of the relationship between cinema and writing. And here it's been also a subject that interested me for a long time. Actually, this book, this work also comes from this kind of exploration and interest, and it's also like the idea that cinema invokes the notion of movement, and this and also writing, the exercise of writing and the exercise of reading also invokes this kind of movement, but the movement of thought, right? Very interested in these dialectics. Cinema is full of dialectics, really. If we think about it, like the hand and the eye, the camera, the projector, the auditorium, the projection booth, screen, camera, etc., right? But there is also this frame, interval, etc. There is another one, and it's movement and stillness, right? Right, and this is also something that interested me quite in this kind of projects that somehow also relate to this idea that Roland Sabatier, the French artist, put as contemplate my word, which speaks about cinema, and you will see my film. So the idea that with words, cinema can also be made. This I am exploring in different ways. For instance, right now I am working on a lost film, a film that this is what analog film is about as well. It's an object and it can be lost. And last year I sent a negative to the lab in Berlin, and when it was sent back to Spain, both the negative and the copy, the print, the final print for exhibition were lost in transport. So this had been the film that I had been working on it for 10 years, not on a continuous basis, okay, because these were like fragments that I sought for some different performances, but I wanted to put something together with all these. And when finally I was convinced by some little film, like it was only like 4 minutes long, but I was going to show it in a gallery in Spain, quite a renowned gallery, and the thing disappeared, just like this. So at the moment I am preparing for a presentation of this work materialized in words. So it's possible to produce the film, if talking about the film, remembering the film and delving into the workings of how this film was emerged or put together, can I reproduce the film? It has been said that the art can be made as orally. Art can be made as a reproduction of images. For instance, we know the work of Marcel Duchamp by the book, even if we haven't seen it, right? But we saw some pictures. We also can go to the museum and saw the work by Marcel Duchamp. This is the physical status of the work, but there is also an oral status of art, and this is the orally, no? When we talk about the work, we are also reproducing the work. So in this project, I will present here as well in Taipei, by the end of February, when everybody is back from the holidays. I will present the first experiment of a film that is made with words, and I will also bring other things, but the film is not here, so I have to reproduce it in a different way. This also works in the same kind of line of a previous work I did with another Spanish artist called Talking Pictures, where we presented a spoken film. And this film, which was just also materialized in words, was made from an exploration of the abandoned cinemas in Madrid, in Spain. So we took several walks and exploring, looking for those cinemas that once existed. So what is there now? Sometimes maybe a gym, sometimes a supermarket, sometimes who knows what, or sometimes maybe the abandoned space is still there. But when we did this exploration, many anecdotes, as you can imagine, also happened. We talked with several people, some people telling us stories about some cinema that changed their lives, or I remember, for instance, going to this cinema where it was a supermarket now, and someone working there would tell us about some secret space in the supermarket that still kept the cinema, some cinema architecture of the previous cinema. So it works in this kind of sense. In the talk we gave after this exploration, where we are also thinking of walking and language and cinema as something that can have some elements in common in a more philosophical way, so to speak. Then the form we gave it, we were trying to follow the form of a film, but in a talk. So in a talk between two people, something that could be even like there can be some juxtapositions, overpositions, or some transitions. So just thinking about those techniques, more like editing techniques of the movies, how to translate them into the oral material, right? And this is also related to this kind of idea of Austin, the British philosopher who approached this idea of how to do things with words, right? In which he talks about the performativity of language and how some verbs they perform what they say. For instance, when you say, I baptize a baby, or is actually the act of the baptizing is being made at the same time, right? Well, anyway, there are some terms that he puts as examples of some verbs, concrete verbs that can perform. For instance, when you say, I promise something, you are, the action of promising is happening at that specific moment. So in this sense, these verbs are performative, according to Austin anyway. So the question here in this kind of words would be how to do films with words, just to say this. So yeah, I don't know. I could keep talking about works, but I also think maybe you are tired, or maybe you would like to say something, or no, I don't know, share some why you came here, or why why or what it is that caught your attention, if there is anything.
简短大概讲一下刚刚全部他在说什么，超简短。 就基本上就三个方向嘛，就是 cinema as body， 然后 cinema as sculpture， 然后 cinema as writing， 然后但是也有可能是 reading， 然后也有可能是并不是只是纯粹的 writing， 对吧？然后主要从刚他的一些作品的范例，就你会发现很多是，就是比如说cinema 所有的元素，就比如最重要的，比如投影设备这些，它其实也变成是主要的，就是被观众看的一个东西。因为就是传统可能电影就是看着一个画面嘛，然后就是比如说他也有说到，就是当然也有很多就是在处理类似形式的一些艺术家，他们并不会真的把自己或是其他角色放置在画面跟就是比如说机械式的投影机，就类比的投影机之间这样，然后就是他一直觉得他可以从这里面做一些什么，所以他才延伸出有比如说 cinema as a body， 然后之后也有就是一个比较像是就是重新把用 cinema 元素再把它变成一个物件，就有点像是 cinema sculpture， 就刚刚有一些他的作品也有这些范例这样，然后到最后就是你要就 cinema as a word 或是 reading， 所以他基本上就他刚刚也有讲很简单的例子嘛，就我们今天去看艺术作品，也不一定真的会到现场看，就有可能就是看画册啊，或者是看评论的报道，然后你也会试图去你的思路就会试图去了解这个作品是在干嘛，然后当然你也可以到现场看这样，所以他也发展出就是另一个部分是今天如果说是用文字或是一些叙事的方式，但是是符合cinema 去制作一个电影的一些细节，然后去讲一个电影的话，那会是怎样这样？然后所以他刚刚也有说，比如说他其实很少真的去完成一个比较像是影像式的 film， 但是他当然也有嘛，就是比如说像他刚刚说他最近的那个不见的胶卷，就是其中一个这样，然后还有很多细节啊，然后我是怕，对啊，我觉得对啊，我大概主要比较容易抓到重点是这些，然后其他的当然就是一些作品的细节，跟他真的要处理他想法跟观念上的事，这样我觉得大家可以去他的网站看，可能会更清楚。然后当然也可以直接问他这样，OK。然后大家有什么问题吗？欢迎提问哦。
Wow. Actually, I have two questions, and I might be wrong, because at the beginning, you said that you were working on this Paracinema questions for 15 years, and you said, as I understood, that you were about to finish, you're about to close these questions. So my two questions, mine, is where did you find the need of working during 15 years on this question? And the other one is why did you, how do you know that you're finished with this question?
Ahora? Yes. No, I'm not finished. I mean, I think it's very open, and I still think for me, it's I started to work on this in these terms, but then somehow, yeah, maybe it's not so related, but when film was announced, like it was going to disappear, celluloid film, then I thought I want to I want to work on this medium as much as I can until it's completely dead, right? Because as Tacita Abdin put it, the British artist, like no artist in art history was deprived from this medium of choice, right? So I don't know if that's probably not answering the question, but the funny thing is, last year I made my first film. Maybe this is the end of my Paracinema, my Paracinema like era. I'm not sure, but for me it's been also interesting. I mean, it's something that I feel very personal as well in my development. It's not like I have other artworks that are not in these terms as well. But of course here I show you something more like coherent. But why I found the need to work on this is something is not programmed, you know, it's like love. You don't reason so much. It's not about reason or something logical. It's like you stumble upon it. The thing is finding you as well, not the other way around. So something that, for instance, it started with a PhD, but when I stopped doing this research for the PhD, it's because my supervisor told me, stop it now, because we have to finish this process now. But this doesn't mean you can continue doing this kind of research, of course. And for me, it started as well as something that I explore in a more curatorial way. But then, the example I put before, like I saw there was some creative area that was being unexplored. So I thought, this is what I need to do. For instance, lecturing is also another creative area where things can be experimented, ideas can be put into practice, and but I guess it's not something that I deliberately plan so much. It just happens depending on the preoccupations of the moment. Thank you.
In the beginning of your speech, I was a little bit lost. It took me a long time to try to catch up what you said. But something gave me a big impression is all the books you mentioned, like from the black box to the white cube, and all those books was publishing in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, almost 50, 60 or 40 years ago. So my question is, the Paracinema is nothing new since that times. Everybody said everything. Well, I think your book is quite new, no? But they have a new thinkers, new philosophers, new person who have to something new to say, or everything has been said.
Thank you, Ricardo. Those books I saw here are pretty contemporary. I will go back to this slide. If we are talking about this, all of these books are within the years 2002 and 2021. But for instance, this one is the one by Yin Youngblood, is the one who he didn't coin the term expanded cinema, but he published the first book on expanded cinema in 1971 or 1970. But it's true, this is an old book, but the way he put expanded cinema is quite confusing. Actually, it's quite interesting, but it has more to do with media art. The approach on expanded cinema is like all of those technological forms that derive from cinema, and he also includes even performance art and experimental films and all sorts of media art, technological with computers, and etc. All of those works he understands under this term of expanded cinema, and also in some interesting connection with psychedelia and LSD and all this culture of those specific years, synesthesia and all of these experiences of the senses, and so an idea of expansion of the mind as well. But I think because many works that were made during the 60s and 70s, what you said seems innocent, but it actually carries a lot of problems, because the history of experimental film is a very complicated history that where a medium is not recognized as an art form. Experimental film didn't have its own artistic identity. It was not the other artists, let's say gallery artists or more traditional artists, did not see experimental filmmakers as serious artists. They were those artists working with film, you know. But of course there were artists like Michael Snow, Hollis Frampton, who were also working in sculpture, in painting, etc., and they were also making films. So maybe they were taken a little bit more seriously. And Andy Warhol also has a lot to do with this, because Andy Warhol made those experimental films that were like nothing happened, just like a 8 hours film, etc., right? But when film was gaining some recognition, experimental film, I mean, within the art field, then there emerged the explosion of all the new art forms and artistic practices, where it made no sense anymore to talk about sculpture, painting, film, and etc., but like a new experimentation where film becomes like something hybrid with sculpture, or all art forms want to play with each other. So that moment that Annette Michelson has said that the victor now questions the victory, it was almost gaining this recognition, but it lost it. So what I mean with all this is that many artworks that were playing between, or that I am interested in, and that could be approached as paracinema or expanded cinema, they remain quite hidden in the history, because other art forms, for instance, then video art emerged, and video art, it ate everything. I mean, then the filmmakers became completely obsolete very quickly. And in the 90s, you didn't hear film connect, like artists working on film. It was all about video art. And then in the 2000s, etc. So it's like a huge gap in experimental film, and all the practices that experimental film, because it's really like a lineage of practices, expanded cinema, and all these practices related to experimentation with film, but also with the film apparatus. It's like they were buried by video art and by other media art in general. But the thing is that for many of us, for instance, for people of my generation, it has been quite interesting to work with the medium of film in this manner, because we have the computer as well, but it's also good to work with something that is an object. Actually, it's an object. You can cut it, you can scratch it, you can leak it if you want. You don't necessarily have to use a camera. But then you project it and it becomes something completely different. And things happen between the projector and the film. Unexpected thing. It's not just about I play the button and that's it. It's not at all like this. I see this in the new generations as well, and this is also quite interesting that more and more young people in the 20s are also very interested in working with film and exploring the performative potential of film projection. So it's something that indeed there is a first wave. We call it the first wave of, actually the first wave is from the 1920s, it's 1 century ago. If we think about Laszlo Moholy-Nagy, Man Ray, or those artists more associated with the avant-garde of the 20s, also exploring some forms, some expanded cinema forms. But then there is this second wave of the 60s and 70s, and now we are in the third wave. And this is the hope that the medium, I mean, Kodak just launched a few years ago the new Super 8 camera and things like this. So yeah, so I'm interested in this dematerialization, right? Very interested, but at the same time, I'm very interested in the pure materiality of film and cinema.
Maybe we can end here and open time for private discussion. Yeah, and before that, I think for us, I only a quick idea. Yeah, that's it's more difficult for us Chinese speaking people to do film with words, because we don't have 2 words for film. We have only 1 word 电影 for both film and cinema. So it's more difficult for us. You have 2 choices, but we have only 1. Okay. Yeah, so it's difficult for Xianyu today to translate both 2 words, cinema and film. He can only use 1 word. Yeah, but you can if you use only 1 word for both cinema and film. Yeah. 电视 TV, television. Yeah, 电影 only 电影. Yeah. Yes, but you do things with words. It's more difficult for us. We must translate or more complicated sentence. Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Esperanza. Thank you, Xianyu, and thank you, everyone.